welcome everyone. We're so glad that you're here. We're going to be starting. So everybody can get a seat, get their food. We're ready to start. I'd like to welcome you all, and we're very glad you came on a Thursday evening to this event. Can you hear me? All right, a big voice. We're glad you're all here. Welcome. We at Chair and DC have chosen the most consequential races for public education to highlight at this forum. We are choosing a new mayor after 12 years, a new delegate after 35 years, and we are deciding whether to return the longest-serving council chair, Phil Mendelson, to his position, which he has held for 14 years. This is a big moment. As you can see on the back of your program, the mayor completely controls DCPS and appoints the head of OSSI as well as the Public Charter School Board. The DC Council Chair with Education, currently in the Committee of the Whole, has line item veto over the DCPS budget, legislative power over policy for DCPS, as well as all the education agencies. The House of Representatives DC Delegate in Congress will be wrestling with how to respond to expanding private control of public money for education. So we've invited a few of the candidates that had the most backing to allow for a more in-depth understanding of their vision and their plans for public education. The ones before you, listed on the program, have committed to being here. Their presence reflects the value they place on public education. But we do want to hear and understand from all of the candidates in all of the races. So we have sent out a questionnaire to the registered candidates for the primaries for council, mayor, and delegate, as well as the special election candidates who are independent. And we're going to post these on our website so you can make an informed choice. This is especially important this year, both in June and in November, because we have ranked choice voting. So you're actually going to choose one, and then you get to choose 4 more. So you really need to know what's happening with everybody. C for DC, of which the Ward 7 Education Council and Empower Ed are members. We are 24 organizations, both ward-based and citywide. We have come together because of our belief in the vital importance of a strong public schools, close to home, that you have a right to go to. We believe it is one of the bedrocks of a democracy. In a public system, elected officials and school leaders are stewards of these public institutions. They are not owners. Our schools are publicly controlled and planned. They are owned by and responsible to the residents of the District of Columbia, all of you. These DCPS schools should be supplemented by, not replaced by, privately run schools. So the conversation tonight will have to, with these candidates, it's crucial to our future. There is tension in balancing the needs and desires of the individual and the chances of a lottery system with what's in the best interest of all of the young people educationally. We want a system not based on winners and losers of a lottery, but based on a commitment to provide a strong education to everyone. Oops, here. We want a good program in every ward, giving more to those who need more, engaging teachers and families in defining the issues and the solutions, as well as concerning ourselves with equity. The concept of good government is under assault nationally. With this election and the one in November, we have come together to be informed to get ready to vote with our limited rights, to assert our values. Our values that lift up public education for all of the younger people living in DC, regardless of immigration status, the language they speak, their economic status, their sexual orientation, or their needs. We will work together to ensure that we are a family-friendly city that will protect, nurture, and educate. This is what prompted C4DC, with special focus from Ward 7 and Empower Ed, to be here tonight. And with that, I want to first say that we're going to have index cards. Scott, so if you have questions that come up, he will come along and collect them, and we'll make sure the moderator gets them, or gets them. And I'm happy to introduce Dr. Marla Dean, the chair of the Ward 7 Education Council, and our host, Ward 7 at this church, for tonight. Thank you.
That's necessary. Good evening. Good evening. I'm Marla Dean. I'm the chair of the Ward 7 Education Council. Each ward has an education council, and each ward's education council is a part of our coalition. So I know it was tough getting over here. Traffic was difficult. I want to say this. This is what our students experience every day, getting to other parts of the city. I had to put that in. Just want people to know. I'm too close? I'm too close? Okay. Oh, you think I'm going to fall? I'm not going to fall. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Oh, the camera. Thank you. Before we get started, it would be remiss if I did not acknowledge our council member, Wendell Felder, for Ward 7, for being here since we're in Ward 7. Okay. And now we're ready. We're ready to start with the Mayoral component of our, I can't even think today. I got old lady brain today, of our forum. And so we want to begin quickly. We want to bring up Vincent Orange, candidate for mayor. We want to bring up Gary Goldwater. I'm sorry. Oh, you're going to come up that way? Candidate for mayor. And then Janice Lewis George, candidate for mayor. Okay, we're going to get started because we have a lot of questions. And let me just say this, with all the questions that we have, we still have many more questions that didn't make the list. So let's get going. First, candidates. We'll go from my farthest to my closest. You have 90 seconds to tell us about you and why you're running for this position. Thank you. Gary, you want to go first? When you start speaking.
Good. My name is Gary Goodweather. I am running for mayor of DC because we need to start to expect more from our services, from our city government, and from our leadership. I've spent the past 30 years in our city starting businesses, raising my two kids, thank you, raising my two kids with my wife in the city, and building in this community. I am here today specifically on education, which, by the way, not all candidates that were invited accepted this evening, but I thought it was incredibly important to talk about how strong of a public school education, how strong of a public school system we need in our city to ensure that every child in every area of every part of the city every day receives an outstanding education, and not a quality education, an outstanding education. And we can talk, hopefully we'll talk more about it, but I am also running for mayor to be of service to our city. I've spent the past 30 years in the military and part of this community, and now I want to give back to everybody.
Thank you. Gosh, thank you. We're gonna go. Mr.
Well,
Orange.
good evening, everyone. My name is Vincent Orange, and it's really an honor and a privilege to be here with you this evening. Let's be straight, I'm running because education saved my life. And I've given you this folder, and you can see in here a Washington Post editorial that says, "Schooling Without Books." That was in 2002. And when I was a council member, saw our children on Fox Morning News in the month of May complaining about not having books for their core subjects, and school is out in June. I passed the legislation to get those books in the school by the second week of school and make sure that we examine the inventory. But it took 3 years to get that passed, and that shows you about the commitment to our education. The reason why I'm so committed to education, because when I was 14 years old, I left home with a suitcase and a dream based on education. I came from a very poor background, but I became a better chance student. And if you just look through here, you can kind of see my journey, but education took me to where I am today. And if you look at my record, go to orangeformayor.com, you will see an exhaustion of my commitment and the things I've accomplished with education. Books for our kids, reopen McKinley Tech as McKinley Technology High School, an $85 million project. Noyes Elementary School, got that done. The recreation centers, jump-started economic development in the city, and everyone followed after us. The key is education. And our son of Washington, D.C., Marvin Gaye, says, "Save the children. Who really cares? I care about education and making sure that our children have an opportunity to do well in life." Thank you so much.
Thank you. When I stand, please complete your final sentence. At this time, we would like to bring Ms. Lewis George up for your introductory remarks.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Janice Lewis George. I am a proud third-generation Washingtonian, but I'm also a proud third-generation proud DC public school graduate. And I'm also proud to have served as student board member on the DC Board of Education. And I'm running for mayor to put people first. And to put people first in education, for me, means that there are excellent schools in every ward in our city. And no matter what neighborhood you live in, you have access to quality education. And what that means for our students and our parents and our educators is that how I lead is by centering and listening to educator voices, listening to parent voices, and listening to student voices. And in listening to your voices, doing the things I know that you all have called for, making sure we address transportation needs in schools for our students, making sure every neighborhood has the same access to opportunity in education and educational programming, making sure our students with IEPs get their IEPs addressed, and our special education teachers get the supports that they deserve. That means doing the work, and I am the only candidate who has a record, who've shown up since day one for education. My first legislation was digital equity, to address digital equity in all our schools. That came from parents and educators and students. My Safe Routes to School came from making sure we had traffic safety around all of our students. My work as facilities chair to improve work order integrity in our schools came from listening to you, and that's the mayor I plan to be, one for all of our students, no matter the LEA. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I want to remind everyone, if you have a question, that Scott is going to be passing out cards. We also have, this is being streamed on YouTube, and we will be taking questions from YouTube also. With that, let's get started. And excuse my hoarse voice, but we're going to make it through. The first one is around school closures and budget pressures, okay? So budget projections will create pressure to close or consolidate schools? What is your approach to making those decisions? And will you commit to no closures or consolidations of neighborhood schools, DCPS neighborhood schools, or no relinquishing of DCPS public buildings? Thank you. Start with you. 2 minutes. Thank you. I'm sorry. My apologies.
Good?
Yes.
We spend more per student than any jurisdiction in the country. When you take into account our capital budget and our operating budget, we have some of the worst long-term outcomes. And part of the reason why is that we have 39.5% chronic absenteeism across DCPS and 57.6% when you look at the high schools. So number one, in terms of budget pressure, we need to ensure that the dollars that are being spent go to where they are needed, and that is educators. And part of what we are going to do to ensure that we are creating great education for every student in every part of the city is hire more social workers. We're going to have mental health professionals, and I want to repeat this over and over again, mental health professionals, because mental health is health, and it is central to ensure the success of our students. We are also going to have special educators. We're going to expand special educators and literacy coaches. We, in Washington, D.C., test at the end of 3rd grade. This is important because after 3rd grade, you stop learning to read and start reading to learn. So we need to start identifying issues sooner to be able to address our kids' specific needs. I will say, in my personal situation, my wife's and my situation, we have 2 kids. We were fortunate enough to be able to pay for all of the testing and evaluation that we needed to be able to have interventions for our children and to be able to provide them an education to meet their needs. It is incredibly important that every child has that opportunity, that every child, regardless of situation, has the ability to get an outstanding education.
Okay, I just want to let everyone know that when a candidate doesn't actually answer the question, I'm going to repeat the question for the next candidate so they're not thrown off. But it's also a signal that that candidate did not answer the question. So, okay, so I'm going to repeat it. Budget projections will create pressure to close or consolidate schools. What is your approach to making those decisions? And will you commit to no closures or consolidations of DCPS neighborhood schools or no relinquishing of DCPS public buildings? Thank you, Mr. Orange. Your turn.
So no, we will not relinquish any schools to other organizations. No, I'm not in favor of closing any schools. And as it relates to the budget, there are no budget pressures. We are a $22 billion organization for 700,000 residents. In terms of dollars, if you look at those traffic cameras out there, it only costs about $75 million to run Zero Vision. But those cameras generate $400 million. We need to ascertain what's happening to those extra dollars. Paid family leave generates about $450 million, but only costs about $50 million to run the program. So where's the extra money? We budget for 4,500 police officers, but we only have 3,200 police officers, and it's been that way for the last 4 or 5 years. So don't let anyone tell you that there is not money. It's all about managing money. You know, we've never had a CPA as a mayor that counts the money. I'm a CPA, I have a Master of Laws and Taxation from Georgetown. I follow the dollars. I was there with Mayor Williams and all of us when we had a $518 million deficit, junk bond status, a control board, but I was also part of the solution with them. And when we left in 2008, Jack Evans was there. We turned it around. We left, there was $1.6 billion in the bank. Junk bond status, we had AAA status. We measured everything correctly. Charlene Drew Jarvis and Richard Monte, they put together a plan called the Economic Resurgence of Washington, D.C., 40 action items, we executed every item, and that's the reason why we have school modernization, the reason why we have recreation modernization, the reason why there is a NOMA district, the reason why there's Union Market. We plan, and we have to get back to really running this government and having the right people in charge that manage those dollars. One of the first things I'm going to do is put together a revenue alignment commission. I'm going to follow those dollars, and I'm going to find out why we have these issues when there's so much extra dollars running around funding things that shouldn't be.
Thank you, Mr. Orange. Ms. Lewis George, your turn, please.
Thank you. You know, the school I grew up in, I went to Rudolph Elementary. I walked to school every day with my big brother. Our school closed, Rudolph Elementary. My middle school was Rabeau, and I was there during the time when Rabeau closed. I can tell you what it feels like when you live in a neighborhood and your school closes around you, because the schools around my neighborhood closed. And what it does is it destabilizes communities, because schools are centers of community. And so for me as mayor, it is going to be important that we don't close any neighborhood schools, but we also invest in bringing more neighborhood schools back to the areas that need them, so our students don't have to actually go across the city to go to schools. For too long, east of the river, students have had to travel long transportation to get to schools. And it's not because they don't want to go to schools in their neighborhoods, it's because the schools that they want to go to don't have access to bilingual education that they have been immersed in. They don't have access to IB programs and programs that students benefit from. They don't have access to academies like the Humanities, Arts, and Media and Simatech. So for me as mayor, I'm gonna make sure that we're not closing any of our schools, and I commit to not closing in our schools, but my capital plan will be based on the needs of our communities. And that starts with listening to our communities and assessing where the needs are in your community. What programs would your community benefit from? What I don't wanna see is students, and we have a very serious middle school problem in our city, where families have early childhood education, they have great elementary programs, and then parents decide they wanna leave for middle school because we have a middle school gap. I commit to addressing the middle school gap by providing middle schools east of the river that have the same programs as all schools throughout the city. I commit to making sure that our capital plan also revisits modernizations. Many of our schools was modernized early on, and those schools are not in good condition. So we have to look at remodernizing schools that were on the early modernization list, and also looking at schools that need to be modernized and have not been doing so. And that's what I'll prioritize in my capital plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to keep in this kind of general category. This is about cross-sector enrollment and efficiency. Many DCPS schools, particularly east of the river, are under-enrolled. So, we're competing for the same students east of the river. We really want to think, does that make fiscal sense to do that? And what steps will you take to address those inefficiencies? And who bears the responsibility for making the hard decisions on this issue? Thank you.
Okay, so with regards to the last question, that is the point, is that we are talking about closing schools, realigning schools, modernizing schools, which we spent an incredible amount of money to do over the past several years. And our outcomes are still declining. That is the point. We need to be focusing on students where they are, wherever they are in the city, so that they are not traveling 45 minutes away, because that is not productive for the child. This is where we have a plan with our Capital Corps. We are going to create a citywide civic organization to be able to provide a pipeline of educators, of mental health professionals, and including one of the branches is early childhood development, because we can't talk about where we are in the city and where people are in the city from a fiscal responsibility. And by the way, I'm the only one who's actually run anything in this race. I'm the only one who has an MBA in finance from Johns Hopkins University, which I received here. This is what we do. We develop solutions. And in terms of fiscal responsibility, we need to be focusing on not cuts, but we need to be focusing on being able to get more revenue, more income for our city, for our residents. Because without income, without tax revenue, without being able to educate our kids, which is fundamental to everything else, making fiscal or hard decisions, that's the easy part.
Thank you. Mr. Orange.
When it comes to education, the buck stops with me. Put it on me. I am going to run these schools. And you know what? The legislation is already in place. It's just the council and the mayor, they have not executed. If you look at it, I'm the one that put in that we should be examining our 3- and 4-year-olds. Stop putting those special education labels on them. Let's examine their eyes to make sure they can see. Let's examine their ears to make sure they can hear. And after you do all that examination, then if there's something going on in that household, let's go to the household and figure out what's happening. Our 5-year-olds have to be ready to sit down as a kindergartner. And then the curriculum has to be from kindergarten to 3rd grade that they are learning how to read independently, that they can add, subtract, multiply, and divide. Because when they get to the 4th grade, the curriculum changes. You're no longer learning to read, you're reading for comprehension. You have to regurgitate what you read. You have to be able to add, subtract, multiply, and divide in order for me to introduce you to fractions, to algebra, in order for you to move forward. And I know all this because I was a better chance student, and before I got my scholarship, they sent me away to Carleton College to make sure that I had the basic foundation for education to move forward. And that's why I'm committed to the basics of education to provide a young person an opportunity to move forward. Now, if they aren't able to make that transition, then that's 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, that's when the streets start calling them, because they find out they've been left behind, find out they've been had these labels, that no one really cares about them. And that's why I go back to the son of Washington, D.C., Marvin Gaye, save the children. Who really cares? Who really cares? I care. My background shows that I care. And I am a living example of what can happen if a child has a better chance and a good foundation to exceed in life.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis George. Yes,
Repeat the question.
the question quickly is many DCPS schools are under-enrolled, particularly east of the river. What will you do to address these potential inefficiencies because schools are competing against each other for students? And who's ultimately responsible for the hard decisions?
I think first and foremost, who's responsible for the ultimate decision is leadership, the mayor. And it's the mayor's job to make sure that all of our schools and all of our neighborhoods are excellent so that they are choices that people want to send their children to. And when we improve all of our schools, then it's no longer a matter of a question of, oh, I'm going to send my children away from my neighborhood. I want to send my child to our neighborhood school. And what does it make for parents to say that, make that decision? I've said a lot of my roles, but my greatest role is Pierce's mom. And as Pierce's mom, I have the decision in a couple of years, in 2 years, to decide where I'm going to send my son to school. And what am I going to look for? Are the facilities at the condition that I want to send my child to? Does the HVAC system work? Does he have to wear a coat in school when he goes? Does he have programming that is 21st century programming? Is it a STEM school? Can he learn science and technology and about engineering, mathematics? Can he learn a language so he'll be a dual language student in a dual language city? Is my son going to have the teachers who have the support that they need to be able to be innovative and teach him, and not just have to teach him to a test, but teach him what it means and what it means to learn in our city, right? And that's what it's about. Does he have schools, neighborhoods that he feels safe in? Does he have safe passage walking to and from school? Can he get to school safely? Are the roads around his school safe? Do I feel comfortable sending my child there and knowing that during recess I don't have to worry about what is happening to him? That's the decision parents have to make. And so by making all of our schools excellent, by making our parents have access to all programming and all types of programming, we eliminate this idea that we're competing, and we embrace the idea that all of our students have access to excellent education and excellent educators, and we support our community, and the buck stops at me, and that's what I'll do as mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, this next question is actually a student question, and it actually hits on some of the themes already raised. My sister and I don't have science in our schools. My school replaced science with computer science to improve testing scores. The loss of science, with the pressure of testing, makes me want to go to school less. What will you do to address this type of issue and make sure that there's a full complement of programming in all schools? Mr. Goodweather.
This again goes back to the two previous questions. It is about meeting the kids' needs where they are. We need to start testing, thank you, I appreciate it. We need to start testing kids or evaluating kids earlier. The earlier you can have interventions, lead to better long-term outcomes. As we talked about, we start learning to read, stop learning to read at the end of third grade, and at the beginning of third grade, at the end of third grade, we start reading to learn. And this is where we need to make sure that in every area of the city, I don't even want to say school. I want to say in every area of the city, whether it's a community center, whether it is a school, that we have all of the services that we need in every area of the city to meet the kids' needs, every kid's needs.
Thank you. Mr. Orange, you're next. 1 minute. Mm-hmm.
Basically, this is a curriculum question. And so, we really need to examine the curriculum that's taking place in the schools. And what is that curriculum really designed to do? What is the goal of DC public schools and charter schools? And we need to place that measured outcomes on the superintendent. If I hire a superintendent, he's going to have measured outcomes. 80%, 85% of the students must graduate with a high school diploma. 85% of the kids must be able to read independently upon going to the 4th grade. We don't talk about measured outcomes. We keep criticizing and criticizing and criticizing. Let's get someone in there that's willing to get in there and get measured outcomes. 3, 4, and 5-year-olds, there's a measured outcome. When you hit the 3rd grade, there's a measured outcome. When you go to middle school, there's a measured outcome. And when you get that diploma, there's a measured outcome. And that diploma has to mean something. And if it doesn't mean anything to the mayor, it's not going to mean anything to anyone else.
Thank you. Ms. Lewis George.
Thank you. The question is about, a young person feeling like there's been an over-reliance on testing, and that testing, over-reliance on testing impacting what they are able to learn and the ways they are able to learn. I think it's important that we find a balance of where we are, and I think it's important to acknowledge that we haven't found that balance in our school system. We've been talking years about the impact evaluation system and how it has been punitive to teachers because of its over-reliance on testing. We have to come up with an evaluation system working together with our educators that isn't so over-reliant on testing and testing alone. It allows educators to not only have to be able to teach not just based on a test, but also be able to teach students in a culturally competent way, which testing ultimately doesn't have the ability to do, to teach cultural competency and to allow our educators that ability. But ultimately, our budgets also have to be one that our schools don't lose money when their testing isn't where it needs to be, and that low-performing schools aren't hit the hardest with cuts that make them have to make false choices as it relates to what programming they actually have in schools. So those are the two things I would change about our school system to diversify the programming they have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. These are two different questions, but we're going to give you 2 minutes, 2 questions. The first one is around educational leadership. Do you plan to retain or replace the current DCPS Chancellor, Deputy Mayor for Education, and IC Superintendent? What specific qualities and priorities will guide your selection or your decision to keep them or not? The second question is about mayoral control. We are in a city with mayoral control. We want to know, has it worked? What revisions might be needed if you feel it hasn't worked? And those are the 2 questions that we have. We're going to start with you, Ms. Lewis-George. Thank you.
Thank
2
you.
minutes.
Thank you for that question. First and foremost, I think every new administration deserves an opportunity to transition and hire new people to meet the needs of the moment. And I think that will have to be the case, that we will look at what it takes to have a new chancellor, what it takes to look at a superintendent, and a deputy mayor of education. And what I'm going to be prioritizing is, are those people, are they willing to listen and have a good relationship with our educators and value their opinions? Is that person willing to center and understand the importance of parent voices? Is that person willing to understand students and understand how to prioritize student voices to prioritize where we are? Is that person going to address the serious issues that we've had that we haven't addressed thus far? Is their superintendent going to be willing to address the transportation issues that parents have been testifying for 5 years about fixing? Is our chancellor going to make sure that we have such a relationship with our students and our teachers and educators that we are improving outcomes? Are they going to have a focus on getting our students in school, because we can't improve outcomes if we don't address absenteeism and truancy? And in addressing absenteeism and truancy, are you going to do the things, the data-proven things that work, like home visiting and investments in addressing root causes like housing and transportation, right? That's what I'm going to look for in new leadership of our education, and making sure that's something I prioritize. As it relates to mayoral control, I think most people know I served as a student board member of education pre-mayoral control. So we were the last pre-mayoral control. I have talked about this, and I have said that I think our current system of mayoral control is not the best system. And I think we need a system that gives some checks and balances. And for me, that checks and balances is an independent OSSI. Now, is it something that we can do on day one? No. But is it something that I think we need to work on as a school system? Yes. Because having an independent state education agency allows for real checks and balances and allows us to improve our school system in a way. And so that's what I would work towards as mayor, and making sure we prioritize. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Orange. Mr. Orange, thank you.
Well, I'm not here to criticize the schools. I'm here to lead the schools. I'm here to examine what's taking place in the schools, and I'm here for measured outcomes. I'm going to have a chancellor, and we're going to have to be on the same page. 3- and 4-year-olds have to be assessed, and we're going to take those labels off of these kids, and we're going to make sure they can sit down as a kindergarten. That's one measurement. The other measurement, I need to examine that curriculum. I need to know what's being taught kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade, and I need to know that that kid is ready for that exam. Because whether we like it or not, there will be an assessment at the end of 3rd grade. And then I want to get someone that I can measure and tell me whether or not our kids are ready for fractions. Are they ready for algebra? Are they ready for middle school? And then finally, for a high school senior graduating, 4 options for them. One option is I'm going to have them be able to go to UDC tuition free. The second option, if you want to go to a higher institution, college, you can use the DC tag. But I need also those minds to stay in DC. I'm going to provide more financial aid so we can keep our kids in DC. I'm not trying to pay our youth $10,000 to leave. I need you. I need you to get into the system and be a part of what you've been doing all your life. The third option is there will be youth apprenticeship programs at the agencies. For example, Events DC, they control all the stadiums. They do all these events. Why aren't our kids being channeled to sports management, to event planning? If you want to be an accountant, how come there's an opportunity for you at the Office of Tax Revenue? We have to lead, and we have to make sure that we do these things right. The fourth option is if you have we have a lot of young people with great minds. If you have a business opportunity, you can go to the Department of Small Local and Business Development, and we'll help you get up off the ground. But there has to be measured outcomes. Stop all this talking, all this criticizing. Let's get the job done.
Thank you, Mr. Goodweather.
I am not here to lead our school system. I am going to be mayor. So even though I am responsible for the vision, what all of my agency heads, everyone in our government will be subject matter experts. I hope, and I intend to, that you folks here in the room, all of you who are dedicated to our kids, to our children's education, will help me with this. In terms of mayoral control, look, like I just said, I'm not an expert in this. What we're really good at is bringing in experts and working collaboratively with all the different organizations, including our host tonight. So I am absolutely fine with giving up mayoral control when it comes to education, as long as there is the superintendent shares my vision, shares my passion for education, and has experience to be able to actually execute on a plan to improve the education system in our city. What has happened in our city, this didn't happen overnight. This has been coming for a long time. And now we need a different type of leadership, one that understands budgets, that understands how to make decisions, and a leader who has a vision that can bring in a team of experts to make sure that ultimately, what is the greatest outcome that we can have? It is for all of us, for all of our children to be set up for success.
Thank you. Okay, we are nearly at time, or really at time, but I'm going to take 1 minute because this question is too important, and then I'm going to give 2 minutes for closing statements. Okay, this is the question because many of our immigrant students, 1 minute, and families have faced significant uncertainty. Yet, many school personnel feel they've been constrained in what support and information they can provide. So, what will you do differently to protect and communicate to immigrant students and families? And what policies will put in place for school personnel? Janice Lewis George first.
Thank you. Unfortunately, I have seen many of our students having to deal with the fact of seeing ICE near and on their school campuses. Students going to their homecoming dance at DCI and being frightened because one of their classmates' parents were stopped. Students near E.L. Haynes who witnessed ICE near their school as they were exiting and looking at them make dangerous decisions around taking people with masked individuals over their faces, with masks on their faces. I've seen our students also deal with warrants being executed as they're walking to school and looking at people bulldoze into homes with guns. So for me, I've been clear that on day one as mayor, I would end cooperation between our Metropolitan Police Department and ICE. And I'm not just saying it now. And I'm not just saying it now because it's popular, but I introduced legislation at the council, which many of the people who had an opportunity to sign on, one of my opponents, did not sign on to that legislation. And because I've been clear about that, I've been clear to the chancellor that I thought he should have been giving more information to our teachers and parents and guidance. And it shouldn't be left up to our teachers to interpret legal and the law. It is not their job. It is our job to give that information. And so for me, it would be real clear guidance to our educators, our teachers, and our principals, and to stand firmly that our schools are safe zones and we will protect them and we will keep ICE out of them. Additionally, I would support our teachers who are on visas, who have been many of them are facing the threat of those visas being taken away and not knowing whether they're going to have a job tomorrow after they have been serving our students. And so I'll make sure that those people have certainty that they will have their jobs, and this is still a pathway to live in this city and to work in this city and serve our schools. Thank you.
Okay, before you go, you were supposed to have 2 minutes to close, but you went a
Oh,
little over now.
Oh,
so we're going to give you your minute to make your final
Oh, this is
remarks.
closing too?
Yes, your final remarks.
Okay.
No, we were going to do everyone and then go back, but now we're just going to give you your minute to
My
close.
minute.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank
Listen,
you.
thank y'all. I am here because I deeply love this city. I deeply love our schools, our educators, and our parents. And first and foremost, as mayor, is going to be listening to our parents and our educators and delivering. First and foremost, when I talk about this being excellent schools for all of our children, I'm also talking about our children from birth to 3 and ensuring that we have an early childhood education system, birth to 3, and affordable childcare for every family, because that developmental age is what matters. I'm talking about addressing the issues that our students face, our parents face, and our educators face. And that is really looking at our transportation system, looking at literacy and math, and closing those gaps with evidence-based strategies that work, and implementing the literacy task force plans and math task force plans. A lot of the issues we face are not that we don't have the information. It's not that we don't know what to do. It's we haven't had leadership who's had focus and attention on getting things done. But I have stood up and said education is a priority. It's been a priority since day one when I got on the council and fought to have librarians in all of our schools. It's been day one priority when I've gone to all 8 wards and stood in these schools and made sure facilities were up to par for our families, for our students, and for our educators. That's who I am, an on-the-ground leader who understands the issues that we face and are ready to solve those problems, and to make sure that I'm going to be the mayor for all of our students, no matter what LEA you are in, and understand that your students' ability to succeed falls at the leadership and what we are willing to do. And I want to note that I am here, but one of my opponents is not here. But you should not be surprised that he is not here, because he hasn't shown up to OSSI hearings, DCPS hearings, or oversight hearings for the last 5 years he's been in office. So I bet you should count that you should note who shows up here, who shows up in your schools, who shows up in your meetings, and who shows up for students in policies and in how they lead. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Orange, you have 1 minute to answer the immigration question and 2 minutes to give your closing remarks. Yes, we're doing it together now. Okay, thank you.
Well, on the first question, I would work closely with the Attorney General, who I believe has been doing a great job. He's taken on the White House. He's won several times. He's just given an opinion on this decoupling legislation as to whether or not we have a $1 billion budget gap, or it could be a $400 million budget gap. So we're following that very closely. But you know, for our immigrant population, we want to protect them to the full extent of the law. Under my administration, we're not there to cooperate with them, but I'm going to work with the Attorney General to make sure that we are within the bounds of the law. But I can tell you there will be no cooperation. And that is a promise to you. That's what I see the Attorney General doing, and he and I together will make sure we address that in a proper way. Now the 2 minutes? Okay. All right. Well, first of all, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to be here with you this evening. This is really a very defining moment in the history of Washington, D.C. And we have to be mindful of Article 1, Section 8. We can say we're going to go poke the bear, but the bear still has Article 1, Section 8 in a Supreme Court. And we have to make sure we're not down there to deal with him in fear, yet we will not fear to negotiate. Those are the words of John F. Kennedy. So we got to find the common ground. He wants public safety, I want public safety. But you know what? You can't provide us public safety. We're going to get back up to our 4,500 officers, and we as a community, we are going to protect our community. We need economic development in this city. We need to make this family entertainment. Commercial real estate, office buildings, that's of the past. So how will this city generate revenue to make sure that we can fund these programs? It's going to be through family entertainment. You know, I am really upset that the new sphere is going out to Prince George's County. It should be going to New York and Bladensburg. It's a revenue generator. We need to bring people into town. We don't build cars. We don't make widgets. Our product is tourism. We need those 25 to 30 million people to come to our city on an annual basis, but they got to feel safe. And when they're here, we need to make sure that they're going to our restaurants, they're going to our theaters. Now let's find something for their children to do. You know, in a way, that's how Las Vegas kind of remade themselves. It's a family destination place as well. That's how they get the dollars. So 2 things. Public safety is the key. Public safety. Then education. My wife is here. Gwen, please stand up. She's been in the school system for 50 years. Under Michelle Reed, she got expert status every time. The council gave her a resolution for what she does as it relates to education. We are an education family because we know the key to it all is education, education, education. You need that foundation. Thank you all very much. And once again, in the words of Marvin Gaye, save our children. Who cares? Who cares? I care, and I'm going to get it done. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Orange. Mr. Goodweather, you have the last words of the evening. 1 minute for your immigration question, 2 minutes for closing remarks.
I get the last word, that's first. So, day one, when I am mayor, I will sign an order to declare all public spaces, whether it's schools, community centers, churches, as off limits. And we will not cooperate with ICE without judicial warrant. There are laws here, and we will utilize those laws to protect our residents, and we will work collaboratively with the Office Attorney General, with all of the different agencies. My entire government will ensure protection for our immigrants, for all residents here in the city, and we need to ensure that we can get more visas and be able to get waivers so that we can get more educators from overseas into our city as well. Look, it is a long time coming that I am here. The education system has not been successful in our city. We have been focused on the wrong outcomes. However, we had this incredible opportunity to redesign our education system and redesign it in a way that supports every single child. And we have all of the resources that we need to accomplish that. Again, everybody in this room, all of the intellectual capital that we have in our city, and all of the passion. We also will, I just want to address early childhood development for a moment. So as part of our capital core, as I mentioned, that we have 8 different branches. One is early childhood development, and we have funding for it. Please take a look at goodweatherfordc.com. Take a look at the plan and see how we're going to fund it. What I am not going to do is pay for early childhood development by raiding the Teachers Equity Fund. We have the ability to be able to find dollars and use them more effectively and get better outcomes. I appreciate it. I truly thank you all for coming tonight. And look, I would love for you all to be inspired by education, because education is foundational to everything. It is foundational to be able to create a city for everyone to be set up for success, to ensure that everybody is successful. Thank you.
Thank you. As we close this part of our forum, the Mayoral Forum, we want to say thank you. We want to let you know that we have over 60 people watching online. So we have a strong online presence. We thank you for being here, standing room only. In addition to that, we want to let you know there were so many more questions that we just did not get to, but each candidate has been given a candidate questionnaire, and you can go to our website, Coalition for DC Schools, and you can find those questionnaires as they come up online. We're going to move quickly to our next forum. We're going to give everyone a chance to just grab something really quickly as we bring up our next forum. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everybody. There are a number of empty seats up front. If you don't have a seat and you want to move up, please do. We can fill all those seats. I want to thank the Coalition for DC Public Schools and Communities for hosting this forum.
Good evening.
We're going to get started. You mentioned snacks, and that's kind of the end of it, right? If everybody would please take their seats, we're going to get started with the second section of our forum. So welcome, everybody. My name is Lee Dingerson. I've been a resident of the district for about 40 years. I have two daughters who went to DC Public Schools from pre-K through 12. I currently work for an organization called In the Public Interest, where I'm a senior research fellow focused on school privatization issues. I'm really pleased to be here, and again, thank you to C4DC for hosting this forum. And I'm excited to introduce Kinney Zalesny and Robert White, who are running for the position of DC Delegate. I'm going to let them introduce themselves in just a second. I just want to acknowledge the powers and limitations of the role of DC Delegate and remind you that the delegate to the House of Representatives is elected to advocate for DC residents and our interests. The delegate can introduce and co-sponsor legislation, can serve on committees and even chair committees in Congress, and they can participate in debates on the House floor, but they can't vote for final passage of bills. With that, I'm going to let Kinney and Robert introduce themselves. You'll have about 90 seconds. We want to welcome you and talk a little bit about why you're running for this position.
Great. Thank you so much, Lee. Good evening, everyone. My name is Kinney Zalesny. I am the proud daughter of a lifelong 11th grade English teacher. I've held many senior roles in my career, including in the White House and at the Justice Department, but my favorite job in my career was serving as president of Peer Forward, a nonprofit that helped thousands of DC students become the first in their families to go to college. Peer Forward was founded in the basement of a teen center in Adams Morgan, and it was based on this simple premise, that the most influential person in the life of a 17-year-old is another 17-year-old. So in this program, we identified the most influential students in an 11th grade class. We taught them how to fill out the FAFSA and choose their college list and write a compelling personal essay. And we taught them how to teach their peers how to do that, so that they, in turn, would change the college-going culture of schools, including Eastern and Maya Angelou and other schools in this ward, on this side of the river, and across the city. Barack Obama was so impressed by the impact we had in this city and across the nation that he gave our organization a big chunk of his Nobel Peace Prize money. As your delegate to the House of Representatives, I will continue to fight every day for DC's students, parents, families, teachers, and schools. Thank you.
Good evening. I want to thank C4DC. I want to thank Pastor and Reverend Curry for hosting us tonight. I'm Robert White. I'm a fifth-generation Washingtonian. I'm the husband to an incredibly beautiful and very patient woman, father of two young girls who are DC public school students. I grew up here in DC, and I was one of those kids who wasn't supposed to make it. I failed every single grade from third grade until my junior year in high school. But I believed that I had something to give back, and I was ready to do the work and dig in, and I dug in. I went to college. I studied at Oxford University. I went to law school. And despite what my plan was as a lawyer, there was an opportunity to give back to my city by becoming legislative counsel to Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton. And so I went to Capitol Hill to serve my city. From there, with no business ever running for office, I ran for the DC Council and have been an at-large council member for the past 9 years. And now, despite what my plan was, I realize that we are at a time in our city's history where the prospect of us losing the little bit of democracy, the little bit of home rule that we actually have is real. And I can't bury my head in the sand and say, I'm going to do what I want to do. No, I'm going to stand up and fight for this city. So I've decided that I'm running to replace my former boss and mentor, Congresswoman Norton, who I was with earlier this evening, because I love this city so much that I will do whatever it takes to save this city, to save our democracy, and to keep us alive until we get this person out of the White House. So I look forward to being with you this evening. Thank you.
Thank you both. I'm going to jump right in. The administration has called for closing the Department of Education, which was created to ensure that student civil rights are being protected. As DC's delegate to Congress, how will you fight to sustain and enhance the role of the Department of Education in the nation's public schools and in the district's public schools in particular? You have 2 minutes.
It's been a long time project of the Republican Party to kill the U.S. Department of Education. They tried over and over and over, and finally Trump got it done. Now, I will say that many of the services of the Department of Education are being successfully transferred to other departments. So that's a key thing to watch for as delegate. But what is suffering and what is missing and what is going to become worse are the protections for civil rights of our students, supports for English language learners, and supports for students with disabilities. And that is, and DC is going to bear the burden of that more than almost any other part of the country. And it's a disgrace, it's deliberate on their part, and we have to fight back. Now, the remarkable surprise is that some of the programs in this last appropriations bill of a few weeks ago were preserved. Title I funding is level, if not a little bit up. Same with TRIO funding. But those funds for civil rights, English language learning, and students with disabilities are in grave jeopardy. As your delegate, I will do what only the delegate can do, which is find us partners and allies to fight with us and for us. Because when you have no formal power, like when you're DC on Capitol Hill, the way you get things done is you find partners and allies to work with you. That's my superpower. That's what I've been doing for 30 years in the public sector, the private sector, and the nonprofit sector. And I will find us the partners and allies across the country to help fight for those things that are in jeopardy in DC, which is funds for students with disabilities, funds for English language learners, and funds for civil rights enforcement for our DC students.
I'm one of probably many people in this room that believe that education is the great equalizer, right? I've seen it in my own life. In my family, my experience is vastly different than everybody else in my family. Not struggling week to week, month to month to figure out how to pay the bills. I haven't been displaced from the District of Columbia. I have a law degree. None of this is because I'm the smartest person in my family. In fact, I am not. All of this is only because of the educational opportunities I've had and I've seized. If we are going to make sure that our young people continue to do better than the generation before, then we are going to have to spend the next 2 years and maybe the next 20 years rebuilding the Department of Education, just like we're going to have to rebuild the rest of the government. I'm going to work with our partners in the region and across the country who know how important this time is, who know that we have to have a high common standard, that we don't send all the programs to the states and make it less efficient and cost more money. We centralize the ones that need to be centralized and send the money to the states for special education, because in our city, there are a lot of students who don't learn like every other student in the classroom. I'm a father who's trying to navigate how to do this with my daughter. I'm somebody that had to figure it out himself. How can I believe that I'm smart when my grades don't reflect it? So making sure that our schools are getting the funding they need for special education, for diversity, equity, and inclusion, the things that have been rolled back. But we're going to have to go further than where we were before, right? Before the Republicans threw the rule book in the fire, we played polite politics. We tried to get, consensus on everything. But that's not the time we are in right now. I will reach across the aisle where I can, but I'm going to demand that we push the quality of education federally and that we get funding for our schools here in DC, particularly for special education. And there's going to be no stronger fighter for education in that delegate seat than me.
Thank you. DC is currently the only jurisdiction with a federally funded private school voucher program. The program receives about $17.5 million a year to provide vouchers for about 1,400 low-income children to attend private schools. Now, the federal government has created a new national voucher program that, if the mayor opts to participate, could divert as much as $25 billion a year from the federal budget to subsidize private school tuition. Most of those who receive those vouchers, if other states are any indication, most of those dollars will go to families that are already attending private schools. What's your position on private school voucher programs? And if you support them, what safeguards or guardrails would you support to protect against waste and fraud? And how would you work in Congress to ensure that those guardrails are included in the new federal program? Robert, do you want to start?
Yeah, happy to start with this one. It is time to roll back the federal voucher program. I went to a high school that, I'll be honest with you, saved my life. Had I not transferred to Archbishop Carroll High School, I wouldn't be here today. Archbishop Carroll High School has more voucher students than any school in the city. And I love what that school did for me, and I believe that other students should have the opportunity to attend a school like that. But as a DC's delegate, I need to make sure that our dollars are going to our public and public charter schools. That has to be the priority. We can't continue to skim, and expect that we're going to see the type of resurgence we want to see in every single school in DC. It should not be the case that Walls is over applied for, that Banneker is over applied for, that Washington Latin and it's not Wilson anymore. It's thank you, Jackson Reed, right? Is over applied. But the same should be true for Roosevelt, for Cardozo, for H.D. Woodson, right? But that won't happen if we continue to skim. And so I'm going to fight to make sure we roll back the federal voucher program. I think most Democrats are going to be aligned with that and get that money into our traditional public schools and our charter schools.
The reason DC has a greater percentage of charter school students than any other city in the country is because of an earlier version of congressional Republican meddling from 25 years ago, when Newt Gingrich and his band of an earlier version of MAGA Republicans used DC as a laboratory to do things here that they wouldn't dare do in their own home districts. And they try out the experiments here so they can perform for their constituents without bearing any of the responsibility or accountability for the people who actually undergo the experiments. Now, I will say that in the 25 or so years that this has been true, public charter schools have served many DC kids very well. And I think at this point, the combination of DCPS and public charter schools is giving families more choice. It's respecting the wide diversity of student needs and student talents, and it's giving parents more options to match their educational needs to their specific children. I am not a fan of taking more federal dollars to give to private schools. As the question suggested, most of the families paying for private schools don't need additional subsidies. What we need is more money from the federal government, and let me be clear that that is the primary role of the DC delegate, is to protect the money that we earn and raise here, but is supervised on Capitol Hill, and then to procure and get more federal money for our schools. And then the leaders of this city, not the delegate, but the mayor and the DC council can appropriately decide how to use that money, those extra resources, to distribute equally and equitably and fairly and successfully across the city.
Thank you. What's your plan to bolster and protect the DC TAG program? Do you support, I'm going to ask two follow-ups and just kind of combine them all together. Do you support the idea that the TAG program should be targeted at the highest needs children first before being available to all DC students? And also there's been some discussion in Congress about opening up the program to students in Virginia and Maryland. Do you support opening up the TAG program to Maryland and Virginia students, and why or why not?
The DC TAG program was recently, finally, and in a long overdue way, increased. And I'm delighted about that. Glad to see there is more scholarship money for more DC high school graduates to go to more universities around the country. I do think the program should be means tested, meaning we should not be giving it to DC's wealthiest families. It should, of course, be targeted first to the families with the least means. Talent is everywhere in this city, but opportunity is not. And programs like that are designed to make sure that opportunity is spread more equally to more students with talent in every corner and every neighborhood of the city. And the last part of the question was Virginia and Maryland. No, they should not participate in DC TAG. They have public universities that are free or low cost for Maryland and Virginia residents. The reason DC TAG exists is we don't have the same level of public university resources for our kids. I do support a great deal, much more cooperation with Maryland and Virginia. In fact, I have proposed a capital caucus that the DC delegate will lead, and Maryland and Virginia will be part of, and we need to collaborate in order to build our economic strength as a region, to solve our healthcare problems as a region, and on other fronts. But DC TAG is not one of the areas where Maryland and Virginia should home in on one of our rare special privileges.
Look, if Maryland and Virginia want to let DC students go to their schools for in-state tuition, I'm willing to let them join DC TAG. Other than that, I'm sorry. I would not means test DC TAG. The history of DC TAG was created because DC doesn't have a robust in-state higher education system like other states. Other states don't means test their in-state tuition, so this is an alternative to in-state tuition. When we start to change it and make it means test, we make it something different than what it was, and I think puts the entire program at risk. What I do want to do is fund more federal dollars to our university, the University of the District of Columbia, a federal land-grant university that gets some but not enough federal funding. The University of the District of Columbia and its current president have shown that it is on a strong trajectory, but we have to continue to support it. And to be honest, the amount of funding that University of the District of Columbia needs is beyond what the District of Columbia can pay by itself. And so we need to push Congress to fund more to this federal land grant institution. And I'm gonna fight to make sure that UDC gets that funding and that we continue to expand and strengthen DC TAG.
Thank you. We're getting a lot of questions from the audience and from YouTube, so I'm going to go to those a little early. So my version of this question was, what will it take to stop the House from overruling DC laws, and how, as delegate, can you facilitate that work? One of the folks in the audience phrased this a different way. What are you going to do to advance statehood for DC now?
Here we go. All right. So the two questions are very similar answers, right? Members of Congress are going to continue to vote against DC unless there are consequences. Right now, no one wants to put their neck on the line for DC if they don't have to. But imagine a world where you know that if you vote against DC, a brigade of DC residents, 500, 1,000 of us, are going to show up and campaign for your opponent. You're going to think twice about voting for DC. What I continue to hear from members of Congress right now is that they are sympathetic toward DC, but they're in a bind. They got to vote to overturn our tax laws. That's going to blow a $600 million hole in our budget. And all they can say to us is, we're sympathetic, but there's nothing I can do. There's something they can do, but they're not going to do it unless they have to. Here's what we're going to do to advance statehood. We are going to seize on this historic opportunity. Folks in this room have been at some of the DC statehood rallies in the past. 2 years ago, 20 years ago, it was the same 50 people, right? We just got older. But people are more upset and afraid than they have ever been. So if you went to that Free DC rally at the end of the summer, you were one of 20,000 people who showed up that said, what can I do that's going to make a difference to defend my city, to defend my family, to protect my neighbor's job? They want to know what it is they can do, where there is something that we can do now. We can go into these swing districts and make sure Democrats win back control of the House and Senate. When we do that, we say to Democratic leadership, we helped win back the House and Senate. You are not going to do more than just pay lip service to DC issues right now. And I'm going to help elevate the delegate seat to a national profile so that people across the nation understand that if you are interested in redistricting battles in Texas and Maryland and Virginia, these are battles about the control of Congress, then you must have DC statehood at the top of your priority list, because that would mean 2 Democratic senators for the District of Columbia, which will do more to swing the balance of power than any handful of delegates from Texas or California, Maryland, or Virginia. And this is our time to get statehood, and we're going to move that ball forward.
Someday soon, God willing, the Democrats are going to retake power in this country. And when we do, we will have to publicly and assertively recommit ourselves and rededicate ourselves to democracy. We will want to tell the whole country and the whole world that America is back in the democracy game. And the number one way to do that is to make DC a state. This is a 250-year-old mistake. It's a deep stain on the nation that 700,000 of us don't have the same rights as everybody else. Now, how are we going to get there? It's a three-part program, and I think people don't talk about either of the first two. The first one is we have got to, as a city, come together around this issue. And I know that the people who show up at the DC statehood rallies feel really strongly, and that number is growing, but it is not big enough. And until everyone in DC actually thinks this is a priority, we're not going to persuade anybody else. And right now, the numbers aren't big enough. We have to do our own public education campaign inside this city. Next, we have to persuade our fellow Democrats. The Democratic Party, and I was a deputy national finance chair at the DNC. The Democratic Party has put DC on its list, but we're never at the top of the list. And we have to persuade them, pressure them, threaten them, whatever it takes to raise DC on the priority list of the Democratic Party. Then, once we've got our own city and the Democratic Party, then we go for the Republicans. Then we make it clear to the rest of the country that if the Republicans thought they could get 2 new senators from making DC a state, we'd have been a state yesterday. We'd have been a state years ago. But we will not win this fight till we build support in the city and then across the Democratic Party. Then we'll be strong enough to win it at a national scale.
Thank you. I'm going to get back down into some of the specific issues affecting DC schools. One of the most effective tools in closing opportunity gaps is the community schools model that brings in wraparound supports for students and enhances real community and parent engagement. Community schools increase academic outcomes, attendance, and more. In 2023, DC received a 5-year, $2.5 million grant to build community schools. But early last year, the Department of Education notified the district that that grant was being non-continued as of the end of last year. What strategies will you use to respond to these and other federal funding cuts to our full-service community schools and to our schools in general?
I love community schools. It's a great idea. A neighborhood has this phenomenal asset of this building, and if we only use it in the daytime, that's a huge oversight. It's a huge waste. It should be used for adult education at night. It should be used for other community programs at night. Community schools think about how to use all their assets 24/7, all the members of the community, how to think outside the box and use the building, the fields, the teachers, the personnel in non-traditional ways. It's very smart. It was a great federal program. We should have more of it, not less of it. It's just one of the many things on the list that the DC delegate has to fight for on Capitol Hill. And the way we fight, I want to be, again, clear. We don't just emote. We don't just get indignant. We don't just get loud on social media. The way we win when we don't have formal power is we find allies and partners to fight with us and for us. We have to find, and sometimes that's on Capitol Hill, and sometimes it's beyond Capitol Hill. I'm the only one in this race who has worked at the top of all 3 sectors: the public sector, the nonprofit sector, the private sector. These kinds of community-based, wraparound, comprehensive services and programs, they take multi-sector thinking. The government is not going to solve this problem for us. And neither is the private sector, and neither is the nonprofit sector. What's going to solve these problems and come up with creative kinds of solutions is the kind of innovative thinking that happens across all the sectors. What you want in your leaders is people who have worked in all of those sectors, who understand the vocabulary of all those sectors and know how to bring solutions, bring the best ideas from the public, private, and nonprofit sector. That's what community schools are. It's a combination of public sector thinking, the schools, and nonprofit kind of thinking for social problem solving, and private sector thinking, like job training that can go on in the schools. Those are the kinds of very successful, evidence-based, proven, successful programs that we need more of, and you should insist in your leaders that they have the background in that kind of multi-sector thinking, and that they're bringing more ideas like that to DC.
A lot of parents in this city grew up in DC schools and didn't have a good experience. And it limits their involvement in the school. And limited parent involvement in the school, it means that their kids often statistically will not do as well. So we need community schools because that's the way to get parents engaged. When we get parents engaged, we have better connection to the kids. So we need to fund that. Federal government has more money than DC, so yes, Kenny is right, we need partnership, right? But partnership without money ain't gonna get you very far. So we need somebody in the delegate seat because community schools are going to be funded locally. We need somebody in the delegate seat who knows how to make the delegate seat work for the economy of DC so that our next mayor can fund these community schools. How are we gonna do that? Well, a lot of people believe the delegate seat doesn't have a lot of power, and I would say we need to make sure we know we have somebody in that seat who knows how much power there is in that seat. If you have been to the Wharf, to the Navy Yard, to Hill East, to St. Elizabeth's East, then to Walter Reed, then you have been to a place that used to be federal land. The delegate got the land transferred to DC, and it became housing, jobs, businesses, revenue for the District of Columbia that can fund programs like community schools. I know that work. I worked on the Wharf. I worked on Hill East. I worked on Walter Reed. I'm gonna next, as delegate, work on LaFont Plaza to open up these landscapes that draw funding, billions of dollars into DC's revenue so that we can fund community schools. Yes, I'm gonna fight for this grant to return. Everybody running for this seat is gonna fight for it, right? Hopefully we get it, but if we don't, guess what? We need the revenue to be able to fund it locally, and there's no seat that is going to affect our economy more in the coming years than DC's delegate seat. And I know how to use it, and I'm gonna use it to our benefit.
Thank you. I'm going to combine two questions here that came from our audience. How would you address the inequity of resources for DC schools, particularly schools east of the river? And with the impending cuts to initiatives that even mention diversity, equity, and inclusion, what is the possible route for ensuring that students in DC aren't shuffled into career development programs that support data centers, for example?
I'm sorry, career development programs that support data centers?
For example,
Okay.
in jobs that support
Okay.
data centers, yeah.
So most of this is going to be the job. Most of this, I'm gonna elect somebody as mayor that's gonna make sure that they fund equitable schools. We're not going to, from the federal level, dictate to DC where the funding goes. We will get funding for school programs. But one of the things that's incredibly important for us to do right now is to come to terms with the fact that there are a lot of young people, given the changes of our economy, a lot of young people that are not planning to go to a traditional four-year college. And with the changes in our workforce and where the workforce is going, a lot of these folks realize that we need to focus a lot more on traditional trade and vocational education. This is something I've been like pounding the pavement on in the council, trying to get enough of my colleagues and the mayor to understand how important this is. I'm married into a family where my wife's father was now retired, a journeyman electrician. My wife and I are both lawyers, but he, with his good union job, traditional trade, helped us pay for our wedding, helped us pay for our home. They retired, right? And meanwhile, we have young people in our high schools right now in 10th grade, 11th grade saying, I'm not going to college, so why am I still showing up? That is a very dangerous question. And so if we're talking about equity, then we need to face the facts of what a lot of our young people are facing. They will tell you. If you ask them what they need, the first or second answer is going to be money. And when these young people know that they can graduate making $70,000, $80,000 and just go up for there, they're going to do that. That means that we need to support that. And as many detriments as there are to being in Congress's backyard, the one thing that we can do is try to make that work in our favor sometimes, where we can incubate national ideas using federal funds, starting in our schools, starting with trade and vocational educations, show proof of concept so that the nation can expand it. But I believe that there is a ripe opportunity for us to get funding to local projects so that we can show that they work.
One of the great innovations of the last 10 or 20 years has been a real flourishing of alternatives for post-secondary education. So I told you before, I was president of a program that helped thousands of DC students become the first in their families to go to college. Now that was all kinds of colleges. It was 4-year liberal arts colleges, it was 4-year public universities, it was 2-year community colleges. And now there is an outpouring and a flourishing of different kinds of options. One of my favorites is the learn to earn kinds of programs, where you work while you're in school, you study while you're working, and you can have a much richer and more individualized plan for how you're going to continue your education, but also how you're going to earn money while you're doing it and be set up for success in the workforce. These are the kinds of interdisciplinary partnerships that we need more of, that DC, as Robert said, is well positioned to lead on, to benefit from. That's what we owe our kids. We owe them the chance to build a life that matches their passions, their skills, their preparation. And that's going to come in all different forms. We owe them that chance to have an array of options ready for them, to be prepared for whatever works best for their life plan, and whatever they choose, they can support themselves and their families.
Thank you. I'm going to move to the lightning round here and ask you a 1-minute question. Delegate Holmes Norton has been on the Infrastructure and Transportation Committee. Which committee would you choose as a delegate if you have your first choice?
I want to be on the Appropriations Committee because that's where the money is. I want to be on the Infrastructure and Transportation Committee because it does oversee some key assets that are important to DC. And I want to be on the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee because that's the one that meddles in our business and interferes with our tax laws and overturns on a whim the legislation we pass. So I aim to be on those committees. And I will say that as a junior member of the House of Representatives, you don't get a lot of choice, but what helps is if you already have relationships with House leadership and members of Congress and committee chairs. And because I was a Deputy National Finance Chair at the DNC and have been working with many members of Congress and the House leadership for many years, I have those relationships, and it will help me get assigned to those committees even when a more typical junior member of the House of Representatives would not get those assignments.
Two key committees that DC's delegate must sit on. House Oversight Committee, that's where the DC subcommittee is. Frankly, that's going to be the front line of the battles with Trump over the next 2 years. DC needs to be there. Second one is the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. I staffed both those committees. I understand those committees. I understand how those committees work. There currently is no member of the region on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, which I believe will give us a strong leg up on being on that committee. DC is in the Oversight Subcommittee, so I believe they will put us on this committee. But it's also, let's talk about members of Congress. It helps to have relationships. It's not going to get you on the committee, but I have members of Congress show up to my fundraisers for this campaign. I've had members of Congress to my home. I know those members as well. I will leverage those relationships, but I also know the work of those committees because I've worked on them. And so I go in knowing how to make them work for the District of Columbia. And that's something that nobody else in this race will be able to do on day one, and we don't have time to waste right now.
Thank you. We're going to move into closing statements, but I'm going to actually launch you with one that came in from the audience. How will you build on Representative Holmes Norton's legacy in Congress, and how will you distinguish yourself navigating Congress to advocate for DC? 2 minutes, closing statements.
Thank you very much to our moderator. Thank you to everybody for coming for C for DC. I believe that the best way to honor someone's legacy is not to do just exactly what they did, but to build on that work. Congresswoman Norton has been our warrior on the Hill for 36 years, but this is a different time. One of the things I'm going to do is have a more national profile, because you can't get statehood if nobody around the country knows that DC isn't a state, or the difference between DC and Puerto Rico. So we have to have a national profile. Nobody in this country is going to vote for DC statehood because it's the right thing to do. If that were the case, we'd be a state already. They're going to do it because it's in their interest. So as delegate, I'm going to make sure the nation knows how this is in our interest. But we need somebody right now who, yes, works strategically, but also knows how to fight and knows what they're fighting for. Somebody who grew up in this city and got their first job sweeping floors at a barbershop because he was tired of wearing clothes from Goodwill is somebody who takes the fight into their own hand. Somebody who was told by their guidance counselor in high school that he would never go to college, went to college, law school, Oxford, became a DC council member, is somebody who knows how to fight. But you need to not just know how to fight. You got to know where the Capitol is, but you got to know where the shrimp boat is too, right? Like, you need somebody who knows this city right now. This is not a time where we can have somebody learn about Congress, learn about Southeast. This is a time for somebody who understands DC, the entire city, who understands what is at risk, who understands the power of that seat and what happens if the next person who represents us as delegate doesn't know where that power is, because nobody's going to tell you. And if you don't know where it is, it's going to be lost. And we can't afford 30 more years to reaccumulate the power that Delegate Norton has brought into that seat. So I will go in on day one knowing the city, knowing who I'm fighting for, knowing how to fight, and knowing the power of the delegate seat. And for that reason, I'm asking for your vote in this important race. Thank you.
I first met Delegate Eleanor Holmes Norton in 1995 when I was working in the White House, and she was a couple of years into this position. I've had enormous respect for her ever since, and I think she's done great things for this city. When Jamie Harrison, who was the DNC chair, endorsed me within the first few weeks of my announcement, he said that he's known me for decades, and he's known Eleanor Holmes Norton for decades. And he said, I am the right leader to carry on her relentless spirit of advocacy for the people of DC. Robert, you are right that there is power in the delegate job. But because the delegate has no vote, the power is not in the role, it's in the person. So if you've stood next to the person, that's one kind of education, but that's not what the job is going to be. The job is going to tackle today's problems, not the ones from 20 years ago. It's going to defend a city that's under attack by our own president in a way that has not happened in any of our lifetimes. The job is what the person in the role makes of it. It's not like the other members of Congress, and it is definitely not like a DC Council job. This is a very unusual opportunity. It's a very unusual, there's no other job like it in the entire United States. It's a very unusual job, and it's a great opportunity for DC. It requires someone who has a national track record of results, of convening people and building coalitions and bringing results to this city, operating on a national stage with a track record of results on a national stage. Nobody else in the race has that. But I have worked at the top of the White House, the Justice Department, an award-winning nonprofit, and a Fortune 1 company. I'm the only one who has that experience and track record at a national level, bringing resources, results, and relationships to the benefit of this city. I hope you will vote for me on June 16th, and I look forward to serving as your delegate.
Thank you. I want to thank our candidates, and I want to thank all of you, and of course C4DC for hosting the forum. And I'm going to bring up Nzinga Tull, who is going to moderate the next section. Are we going straight to that? 2 minutes if you want to get food.
Okay, good evening, everyone. If everyone could please take their seats so we can start our last panel for the evening. Everyone's taking their seats. Thank you so much for sticking around, for coming out, and also for sticking around. I know it's a school night. I am happy to moderate the panel for the DC Council Chair. In the interest of time, there are some descriptions of what the chair does, the impacts they have on education in DC, and that's on the back of the flyer that has the program. So we're gonna jump right into questions. I'm very delighted to welcome Jack Evans, candidate for Council Chair. Yes, thank you, Jack, for being here and being on time. And Phil Mendelson also is on his way. He should be here momentarily, but we're gonna go ahead and get started with the longer form questions, and then we'll pick up more later. Okay, so the Committee of the Whole, the DC Council Committee of the Whole, has extensive responsibilities, and now it includes education, because there is no Committee on Education. While there have been multiple hearings on the current Committee of the Whole, there have been few policies enacted on education aside from the School First Budgeting Act. In the first session, there will be, in the next session, will you advocate for a separate committee on education, given that it is a large proportion of the city budget, and you have 2 minutes to answer that question, but I just realized I made a mistake. I'm going to invite you to have a 90-second opening statement, and then we'll come back to the question. Okay. All right?
Okay, thank you. Now, let me work here. All right, there we go. Thank you very much, and good evening, everyone. And I want to start by thanking C4DC, Ward 7, the pastor, and all of you for coming out here tonight to participate in this discussion debate about the future of our city. 6 years ago, I resigned from the Council of the District of Columbia. Mistakes were made. I took responsibility for those mistakes. They won't happen again. And I think it's very important to note I was cleared of any wrongdoing. Since that time, when I left the council, and as many of you know, I was on the council for 30 years, 1991 to 2020, longest serving council member in the history of the council still today. I've been very involved with the community. I served on the Arts and Humanities Commission. I worked with Robert Bobb in putting together the study for the mayor on how to bring the football team back. And finally, for the last year, I worked at the Department of Housing and Community Development, working on affordable housing. A very enlightening experience. Why I'm running for the council is I'm alarmed by what's going on in our city today. I'm alarmed because when I was on the council, when I left, we had a AAA bond rating. Our finances were the envy of every city in the country. Today, we've lost the bond rating, and according to the mayor, we are $1 billion in debt going into this budget. When I was on the council, we had a police force of 4,000. Our crime was down. People felt safe in our city. Today, they don't. And we have a police force, 3,100 officers. And finally, when I was on the council, education was doing well, and over the last 6 years, I just haven't seen much improvement. Education is critical to me. As you know, I'm a father of 3 children, 2 girls and a boy, triplets, who are now 29 years old. When they were 4, their mother was diagnosed with cancer, my wife, and she died when they were 6. So throughout that entire time period since then, I was a single dad raising 3 kids. So I can talk about education, the birth to 3, kindergarten, elementary school, high school, college, not just from a policy point of view, but I lived it.
Okay, thank you so much. So now, can we move on to that first question? The Council Committee on the Whole. Oh, good afternoon, good evening. I'm going to invite Chairman Mendelson onto the stage. Thank you. Oh, and you got good knees. Good for you. Well, I'm glad you made it.
Good timing.
This is excellent timing. I don't know if you need to catch your breath, or would you like to, a round of applause for Council Chair Phil Mendelson, please. Would you like to do an opening statement, a 90-second opening statement? Yeah. Okay, and he's going to do a 90-second opening statement now. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Phil Mendelson. I'm the current chair of the Council of the District of Columbia. I believe this is the first candidate forum of the season. I'm glad to be here, and thank you to the sponsors for sponsoring this. I think most of the emphasis will be on education, which I've had oversight of for the last 4 years. I think it's an area of our government that makes a big difference in terms of quality of life, as well as a long-term investment in improving outcomes for our children and for our community. Other issues that I think are important, I will start with this, and that is, as chair of the council, I am the one who takes the lead on behalf of the legislative branch in pushing back with Congress and federal interference, and in making sure that we do everything we can to protect ourselves from some of the interference that we're seeing. As the chair of the council, I also chair our committee of the whole. The committee of the whole, besides education, has the Department of Buildings, which is important. Oh my goodness, there's a timer. I have to get used to this.
Yeah, I can't see it either.
The Department of Buildings, which makes a difference to all of us, both in terms of business activity as well as residents who want to just have decent homes, as well as renters with housing inspections. I look forward to the questions and the campaign, and I thank you all for being here. I will just end with, again, I'm Phil Mendelson, and I ask for your support in the primary election. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay. So now the third time is the charm. Phil, I'm not sure if you heard this question, but the Committee of the Whole, as you know, has extensive responsibilities, and they're also covering education. We want to know from each of you, and I'll start with you, Mr. Evans, in the next session, will there be a separate committee on education, given that it is such a large proportion of the city budget?
Okay, thank you very much. Neither Phil or I can see that. So
I'm
you're
sorry,
gonna-
and I'll
you're
just
gonna
let you
have
know
to-
you have 2 minutes, and I'll help you, because I know that light
yell
is
out
bright.
the time or something. That'd be great. I would absolutely have a committee on education. The council has, for the most times in its history, had an education committee. I went back and looked it up. Back in the very start, there was an education committee. I think there were 2 or 4 years when there wasn't, and then all the way through till Vince Gray was mayor. We had an education committee. He didn't have one for 4 years. We had it again, and then currently we don't have one. We absolutely need an education committee, so we have a council member in charge of education who spends his or her time focusing solely on education. My view of the council is much different too. I believe every council member should chair a committee. When I came on in '91, John Wilson was chair. We all got committees. If you are elected to the council and you can't chair a committee, you don't belong on the council. I will show anyone who becomes a council member how to chair a committee if they need that help, and how to do more vigorous oversight. What I'm seeing now, since I left 6 years ago, too much gripping and grinning with the people they're supposed to be overseeing. You're not friends with the people who run these agencies. You are oversight. You make them do their job. So if I'm chairman of the council, I will run the council. We will start on time. We will end on time. Our committee structure will be organized. We'll have an education committee that is really focused on education. Now, what does that say? 30 seconds? Yes. My philosophy on education is simple. As I mentioned, I have 3 kids. I saw them all the way from the beginning. I worked with Vince Gray on birth to 3. We don't have it like it's supposed to be. It's not 20 kids in a bedroom watching Barney. It's what I did with my kids in the church basement interacting with other kids. We have pre-K. We have kindergarten. These children have to be ready to read by the time they hit 1st grade. That's the reason for a lot of our truancy, because they're not.
Thank you.
So the question was whether in the next council period there would be a separate education committee. The honest answer is I don't think so. The education's been in the committee of the whole and has the advantage of every council member being on that committee. It also has the advantage that the committee of the whole, because it's a larger committee, has more resources. If you look back at the history of education committees, you will not find that there has been as many staff, committee staff, devoted to education, or as good staff devoted to education. I will note Hannah Kozik and Aaliyah McNeely, who are on the staff, and former teachers. I don't think anybody would question the quality of the staffing, the quantity, if I may, of the staffing that I have provided as chair of the committee of the whole with responsibility for oversight of education. Go back 4 years when there was a separate education committee, less staff, less attention, less oversight hearings, less legislation. I would add as well, because this is true with other issues involving council organization, which, by the way, I think organization is not one of the more interesting things to talk about, but if you look at the different committees on the council, what you will see is that really the quality of the committee is in the quality of the chair of that committee. So we can have a separate committee on education and not a really good chair of that committee. And I would say if you look back over the last 20, when Jack first got elected, that folks were critical because of the quality of the chair of the committee. So it's not about where it is housed, but I think there's an advantage to all 13 members being on the education committee. Education is important. I kind of touched on that earlier, but since I have a couple of seconds left, my daughter went to DC public schools, by the way, Eaton and Deal and Ellington School of the Arts, and I value the quality of education. My time is up. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The DC State Board of Education has a very limited authority and is constrained from even executing on the modest charge that they have. The State Board has proposed a series of modest reforms that will help them better serve the public, having the power to amend policies from OSSI, expanding data access. So these are not like an overhaul of the governance structure, but these are modest reforms that will help them to be more responsive to the constituents that they serve. As chairman, will you hold a hearing and potential vote on the State Board's recommendation to expand its modest authorities? And we do know that 10 or 12 council members have indicated that they would support this kind of legislation. So you have 2 minutes. Mr. Evans, please.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. The answer is yes to that question. And remember, the panel before made a big deal, or the first one, about the candidates not answering the questions. So I will answer the questions, and the answer is yes. I was on the council, as again, back in '91 all the way till 2020, when the mayor took over the school system. I was on the council when it was chaotic, when we had a school board, when we had a mayor, when we had a council. We had a lot of this. Everybody blamed everybody else and nobody was getting done, which is the reason when Adrian Fenty became mayor, he took over the school system with the support of the council. And then we set up the state board. Now that was a while back, 20 years ago. So it is time to maybe modernize what the state board's role is. And the reforms I've looked at seem to make some sense. But I still support mayor control of the school system. Maybe it's not the best system, but I can tell you, it was a lot better than what we had before. The council, and particularly the chair, play a big role in this, because everything that the mayor proposes comes through the council. Again, why the committee is so important, because that committee will focus on that legislation. Right now in the chair's office, the chair has the old DCRA stuff, the CFO's office, the education committee, and a number of other things. It's too much to have in one place. That's why I would disperse it around to the 12 different committees, have the council members focus on those important parts of our city and do the oversight, the vigorous oversight that's necessary. I'm just not seeing that getting done now. So, back to education again. I was talking about birth to 3. So important, kindergarten and pre-K, so when our children go in first grade, they can read, and by the time they have those 3rd grade tests, they're prepared. What I'm hearing and seeing from kids is, I'm not going to school because I don't understand what's going on in the classroom. It is so critical that our children at an early age, they're like sponges, they absorb things, have that exposure to education. If we don't do that, we are failing our children again and again and again.
Thank you.
So the timing of this question is great, because this morning I met with Scott Goldstein and talked about this bill that you're mentioning and whether we would have a hearing. We talked about the possibility of having a hearing. I also met with the Board of Education with regard to the issues that are in that bill and whether we would hold a hearing. So I haven't scheduled a hearing, but I certainly am concerned, as I conveyed to the people I met with today, with issues like access to data and being able to do, the board being able to do more than just a yes or no vote when it comes to policy making with the Office of the State Superintendent. I will say, listening to the discussion here, there is some irony, because I was one of 2 votes against mayoral takeover. I was one of 2 votes against mayoral takeover when that legislation was proposed in 2007. I also think there's some irony about talking about legislation such as birth to 3 that went through the council. What the council, in my view, does too often, which I do not like, because I think it is cynical, is they pass legislation like birth to 3 and then they don't fund it. The biggest piece of birth to 3 is the early childhood pay equity part, which I have been fighting with the mayor and the chief financial officer for the last, 2-3 years to adequately fund. And I won't say that it's adequately funded, because there's a shortfall, I think, of about $10 million. That policy is supposed to grow, but at least in the last several years, the last 2-3 years, the council has been funding it and struggling to get it adequately funded, unlike when birth to 3 was adopted and there was no effort to fund that legislation. I think I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have a lot of wonderful young people who are watching online from home, so we're really happy to, that our youngest Washingtonians are plugged in and invested, and so this comes from our young people who are online. What is your exposure to the needs of Gen Z, Gen Alpha, and Gen Beta students? And Phil, I think we'll start with you this time, and you'll have 2 minutes on the clock.
So I'm not going to stand here and pretend that I hang out with Gen Z and so forth, but I am sensitive to the fact, thank you, I am sensitive to the fact that in elected office, we have to be listening to all constituencies, including different age groups. I will note as well that because of that, we are scheduling another hearing on, just for youth. So any of you who are adults, sorry, you're not allowed to testify. I think it's Saturday, Wednesday or Thursday, March 19th, starting at, I believe it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon, after school, go on as long as we need to go on because of youth. This will be the second time we've done this. We did it last year to hear directly from youth with regard to their perspectives on education, schools, good teachers, good, bad schools, whatever, to get that perspective. I also try to be out in the community. It's another way I try to make myself accessible. In fact, I dare say that I think I have, as a council member, a reputation for being among the most, if not the most accessible of those who are on the council.
Okay, and Jack, that question also for you. What's your exposure to the needs of young people?
I can tell you right out of the box, I have 3 kids, 29 years old, but during their growing up stages, I had exposure to them and their friends in all aspects of what it was like to be a grade schooler, a teenager, a college student, and now a young adult. And when you're a single parent, like I am, Dad never goes away, always calling to see what's going on. And that's great. But I've also had exposure through various nieces, nephews, etc., and then just being in the city with friends and talking to them. So I have a very good understanding of what it is important for our children and how they get educated, and this is where we are letting them down. Every child in our school system should be evaluated. Right now, they're not. Every child should be evaluated to find out where they are and what their strengths and weaknesses are. My daughter, Christine, who is a fashion designer today, couldn't read, write, add, subtract. She was struggling, where my daughter, Catherine, was very good at that stuff. But we were able to very quickly find out about what the shortcomings were and how to address them. That's not what we're doing in our school system today. So I would propose that every one of our children in our system be sat down to figure out where they are and what we can do to help them be the best that they can possibly be. It's absolutely critical. And then finally, one of the other things as chairman that I will absolutely get done is vocational technical schools. I hear it all over the place. We used to have 11 of them in the city. Did anybody remember, like Bell and Armstrong and places like that, where our students who weren't necessarily headed to college would have an opportunity to learn a trade? And I can tell you, it's something that has widespread support in this city, and the school system and the council just doesn't even address it. And then finally, it's interesting, if you were here for the prior debates, what was never mentioned once, artificial intelligence. That is the key to the future of what's going on in our school system.
Thank you so much. Okay. Our next question. The council approves the DC Public Education Master Facilities Plan. And we, as you know, we have a system of publicly managed DCPS schools within a larger lottery system with charter schools and application middle and high schools. But there's no plan that guarantees that DC maintains the facilities for that core system. We have a declining birth rate, and our city's problem of an increase in the number of open seats in schools throughout the city is continuing to get worse. And particularly when we're talking about tightening budgets and cutting back on really important supports, we have to be aware that there are a number of inefficiencies within the way that our facilities are managed. And so a number of our constituents would like to know what you would do as chairman to solidify the core DCPS system given the inefficiencies and excesses in capacity in our current ed landscape. And I'd like, Phil, for you to start. You would have 2 minutes to respond.
Sure. So a number of years ago, the council smartly, in my view, required that there be a master facilities plan for all of our educational facilities so that we're actually planning, correlating enrollment, growth or decline in enrollment with facilities and what facilities we are spending millions of dollars to maintain or modernize. That all makes sense. The last facilities plan that we got from the executive was nothing but data and no plan. I had to push, because this was not when education was in the committee of the whole, I had to push that the chair of the education committee disapprove the plan. The idea of approving a plan that was not a plan, that was only data, in my view was abhorrent, so we disapproved it. I'm looking forward to a new administration because we will have a shot at getting a new plan and something that is actually we can rely on. I will say this, a challenge with having a good master facilities plan is that maybe it's going to tell the truth about what we have to do with schools and school facilities. And that can be unpopular. School closings are extremely unpopular, and it may be that there has to be some of that, whether it's on the charter side or on the DCPS side. So I think the fact that we do not have a master facilities plan for our schools is a problem, given the hundreds of millions of dollars that we are investing in our schools. I just want to add that I'm happy if anybody wants maybe afterwards talk about my daughter. She is an artist, and I will have pictures on my phone, and I'll be happy to share them. She's really a great artist. Thank you.
We got to promote our kids, you know. What are you going to do? I'll give you Christine's card. She's online. You can buy stuff. So we're talking about facilities, right? Master facilities plan and where we should be. First of all, I have a difference with with Phil on this one. I would not close a school in this city. I've been through that a long time ago. All the schools we have, we're keeping. And our goal is to get children in the schools, not to close the schools. When I was on the council, they tried to close several schools in Ward 2. Hyde, Francis, and there was another one. And I fought with our neighbors, all remember, we kept open Francis, we kept open everything else, and they are now thriving schools. So that's a bad idea. All right, we have to wind the clock back. Sometimes I march down memory road. Facilities plan. Adrian Fenty and I were on the council, and we passed the School Modernization Act. It was to modernize all of our schools, because back then people were saying kids can't learn because the schools aren't modern. We knew that was ridiculous, but nonetheless, let's do it. Alan Liu, who is the builder of the stadiums, was put in charge by Vince Gray to get it done, and he did. We modernized the schools, but I remember at the time, I thought we set up a fund to keep them in the shape they're in. Politicians hate doing that, because they want to show you something new and shiny, not something that looks just like it always looked, okay? So if we don't have that modernization fund in place to make sure that we keep the schools in good shape, then we got to do it again. That's critically important. We have to finish the facilities plan. And you know, sometimes you got to do this, and I did this when I was on the council. If the mayor doesn't get done what he or she's supposed to do, you just put them aside and do it. And that's what the council has to do. If the mayor won't send you a facilities plan, just do your own. And it takes leadership. That's what I'm talking about here. It takes leadership to get things done. When I was on the council, if I had to wait around for people, we never would have built the baseball stadium. We never would have built the convention center. Those were 7-6 votes on the council. They never would have happened if you have to sit around.
Thank you
am I
very
done?
much.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, so this is our last 2-minute question. We will ask for a 2-minute response. What is your assessment of how the current DCPS chancellor has done in his time in his position? Beyond asking difficult questions at our oversight hearings, what can the council do better to hold the chancellor accountable, both to the goals that are set by the system and for the demands from educators, schools, and the public? And Jack, can you start us off? You have 2 minutes.
I'd say a C. I'm not happy with what's been going on here, certainly not in the last 6 years. So what do you do to change it? How do you change it? You do oversight on a year-round basis. I'm going to give you an example. When I was the finance chair of the city for 20 years, okay? And we were a mess back in, well, we were so bad we got a control board in place. And what we had to do was to work our way out of that. Alice Rivlin was running the control board, I was the finance chair, and we sat down with the CFO and the entire financial cluster every 2 weeks, not in January to March, every 2 weeks. It got easier for them to do what was necessary to get done than it did to meet with us. With the schools, it's the same thing. This is our plan. The Education Committee chair will be sitting down with the chancellor and everybody else who's involved and make sure that the plan gets implemented. If it's birth to 3, the council controls the money. Don't forget this. The mayor proposes budgets. At the end of the day, the council tells everybody where the money's going to get spent. If it's not funded, then we fund it. And then we sit down with whoever's in charge to make sure that the program is working the way it should. And that's at every level of our society and in the students. There is nothing more important, and I go back to this. We have to educate our children. They have to be going into 4th, 5th, and 6th grade, able to do the math, reading, things of that nature. And there are now systems around the country that have gone back to the way it was when I was in school, teaching phonics, et cetera, and they're doing it very successfully. That's what we have to do.
Thanks so much.
Well, you can talk the talk. I think the question had to do with the chancellor. I'm not sure I want to say too much at a public forum.
Did you want me to repeat the question? Or
No.
Okay.
No. The question was, I remember what the question was, and I intend to answer the question. I don't want to say too much at a public forum, but I have communicated my views to the mayor with regard to the chancellor. I also have had a number of oversight hearings, far more oversight hearings in the committee of the whole on education than we ever saw with education committees in the past. On academic achievement, what is the chancellor doing to improve academic achievement more quickly? I don't think it's great to boast that we are the fastest improving large city public education system when what we see in the assessment results is growth of 3 points, 4 points. When proficiency is somewhere around 50%, it should be much higher. Every child, the mission of DCPS, of our public education system, is every child has access to a high quality education, but we don't see that in the achievement results. We've had oversight hearings on that. We've had oversight hearings on what do we do to improve attendance or reduce truancy. We've had oversight hearings on what is the city doing, what is the chancellor doing to reduce teacher turnover and deal with issues like wellness, teacher wellness. The council doesn't run the system, but we do have the ability through oversight to put pressure. Give you an example, OSSI DOT, horrible. OSSI has been promising that it would provide GPS tracking to parents for years. We finally have made some progress because we've had multiple hearings month after month in the last few months to force the OSSI to get that contract. There is not the inspiration from the top that there needs to be. What I see with DCPS is that there are teachers in every school who are committed to educating kids.
Thank you very much.
And that's why we're doing as well as we are doing, but not the inspiration from the top.
Thank you. So we're going to move into our 1-minute questions as we close out this panel. And Jack, I'll ask you to start off. And this round, the responses are all 1 minute. The first question, what are your top 3 priorities for pre-K through 12 public education in the next council session?
The top 3 priorities, I've mentioned them, so I'm going to do it again. Birth to 3 is critical. Early childhood education is critical. Evaluating every student we have in our school system to see what they need to be the most successful they can be. We have to talk about the kids, okay? That's critical. You know, I got 3 questionnaires already on education. And nowhere in the questionnaires they're talking about the kids. It's always about the money or something else. The kids are the most important thing, and results are the most important thing that comes from everything we do. So I want to give you a little anecdotal thing. I was chairman of the board of WMATA Metro for 5 years, okay? And I used to go to the meetings, and I finally figured out what WMATA stood for. we meet and talk a lot, okay? That's what it stood for. And I was done with that. We had to get things done. That's what we have to do on the council. It's great to have hearings, it's great to listen, it's great to talk, but results are what matters. And it takes leadership to get the results, and sometimes it's not popular. Again, many of the big projects I worked on, they were very unpopular, but they needed to get done, and we got them done.
Thank you very much.
I have to remember 3. So first would be to right-size the funding and have adequate funding for the child care subsidy and the pay equity programs and PKEEP. So I consider that one priority. So a lot of potential with improving education through early child care. Second priority would be more focus, more resources, probably through OSSI, but also through the LEAs on literacy and math, focusing on using best practices, the science of reading, and so forth. The third could be continuing to focus on student attendance, I want to say academic achievement, student attendance, reducing truancy, reducing chronic absenteeism, getting more kids into school. That could be a third, but there are a couple others that could come to mind. More focus on resources so that our teachers stay.
We had time for 3. Thank you. Time's up. Thank you very much. So our next question, another 1-minute answer, and this time, Phil, we'll start with you. Will you commit to working to allow the Washington Teachers Union to negotiate the teacher evaluation system as part of collective bargaining?
The short answer is no. I remember why the law changed with regard to that. It was back in the 1990s. I suspect that my answer may not be very popular, but I remember how we got to where we are with this. I will say I think the impact evaluation system should not be a verb for how to punish teachers. That is a problem, and the chancellor needs to figure out that he's got to make the evaluation system something that actually enables teachers to learn and grow and become better. That's not what impact often is about. And it's impossible, in my view, to defend impact. So I guess I'll leave it there.
I tend to agree with Phil on some of that, but I do think the WTU should be a part of it. I think impact, you have to really start over. Impact has really not worked. How do you evaluate teachers? That's really what it comes down to. If you give it to the WTU entirely, things will come out, people won't agree with it, it'll look like it's biased. If you give it, again, to some other entity, same thing comes out. So we need to come up with a model that works. My mother was a teacher, my sister was a teacher, my cousins are all teachers, my grandfather was a teacher. So I grew up with teachers and understand how they are held accountable. And so what I would suggest, again, as chairman and working with the new mayor, to come up with a formula to evaluate teachers that includes everybody. Everybody has a seat at the table, and we come up with a process that works. The goal is to have good teachers for our children, not an employment agency. We want to have good teachers for our children because that's where it all starts. Again, going back to birth to 3, we're not sitting in the couch watching Barney. We're interacting with teachers, with parents, and learning how to read.
Thank you. So we're going to have one final question before we go to a 90-second closing remarks. What will you do to ensure that ICE cannot enter schools, school grounds, and public transportation infrastructure so kids can get to and from school safely, freely, and without fear of harassment and harm from ICE? Phil, we'll start with you.
Well, this is a difficult question because on the one hand, it's very important, right? We do not like the kind of harassment and tactics and illegal actions by ICE. None of us want that. On the other hand, the District of Columbia government does not control federal agencies. We do not control ICE. We struggled with this as a council just the other day with legislation, which we really debated, kind of behind doors, whether we should move forward with the legislation because it was requiring more transparency with regard to operations when federal law enforcement, namely ICE, is involved with use of force or any police activity. We went ahead and we voted unanimously on the legislation. But there's only so much we can do with regard to controlling ICE. When there was that incident outside, I think it was DC Bilingual, I myself filed a complaint with the Office of Police Complaints. There were several complaints filed, and there's an ongoing investigation with regard to the officers that were involved. I assume you know what I'm talking about, and if you don't, my time is up. I mean, none of us want to see ICE in our schools. None of us want to see ICE outside or around our schools.
Thank you.
Neither ICE nor the National Guard should be in our city. It's ridiculous. Gone, okay? National Guard especially. I dealt with this a long time ago when Sharon was the mayor. The National Guard is a disaster waiting to happen. Either they're going to shoot somebody or somebody's going to shoot them. Remember Kent State, Jackson State. That's what goes wrong, and something happened here. Now, I would take a different approach than anybody you've heard tonight. It doesn't help to protest. It doesn't help to say, ain't it awful? I'd go see the president. I'd go see Trump, who is the president. I know him from working with him on the hotel and in the Wharton School. And I would sit down with him and explain to him why having ICE and the National Guard in my city is a terrible idea, and I believe we could get them out. That's the first thing I'd do. Secondly, if that doesn't happen, I will guarantee you that ICE will not be interfering with our schools, with our children on their way to school, if I have to have them escorted by our police to get to school, to keep them safe. There is nothing more important for children to feel safe. Let me tell you, I know firsthand what it's like for children when they don't feel safe.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you both, gentlemen. I think we're at time, and Phil, we'll start with you. We have 90 seconds for a closing statement.
You know, it's difficult in a minute or even in 2 minutes to say a lot. It's good training for us. I will say this. I appreciate that this forum has been about education. I think education is one of the key services that government delivers because it provides the opportunity for every child, regardless of their income, their background, to learn and get the skills so that they can go on and become an adult in whatever they want to do. That's what, in my view, public education is about. I can't say that we've been successful about it because there are too many kids who are not succeeding when they come out of our public education system, and I would say more, but I'm going to get the clock on me in a second. I think that education and my focus on education is especially important because I care about our social justice issues in this city. And we cannot buy our way out of those problems. We have to invest in training our way out of those problems. It's a funny way to put it, but if you think about it, kids who can learn and graduate from high school with a diploma that is meaningful have a chance of getting a job and a better paying job than if they drop out. And kids who are doing well in school probably are not stealing cars. And kids who are doing well in school and get a diploma have a chance of going to college and getting an even better job and getting the kind of income that closes the wealth gap. So many of our social problems are linked to education, and education can be the key, the long-term strategy to improve our society.
Thank you very much.
Well, first of all, I want to thank all of you for staying out here late at night. It's raining out, and here you are. So thank you for being here, and thank you for listening to us. And thank the church for hosting us and all the groups that sponsored us. It's a real opportunity. I want to point out that the chairman of the Council of the District of Columbia is arguably the most powerful person in the city, more so even than the mayor. As I pointed out earlier, the mayor proposes things, but the council disposes. We make the decisions. And that's why whoever holds this job as the next chairman is critically important. And I told you, I'm running for this because I'm alarmed at where the city is. I'm alarmed that our finances, which had a AAA rating, were the envy of everybody in the country, we now have $1 billion shortfall. I'm alarmed that our police department went from 3,800 to 3,100 officers, and that we had a million hours, now hours, not dollars, 1 million hours overtime last year at $70 an hour. That's $70 million. We could have hired 1,000 officers for that. I'm alarmed at the school system. You know, when we did this exercise of taking over the schools back in 27, I had high hopes. We all did. We all had high hopes. This was going to work. We have pumped billions of dollars into the school system. The budget of the education cluster is $4 billion. So there wasn't money. We modernized the school. So what went wrong? And it goes back to what I was saying. There's not a lot of hands-on on the kids. You know, we have to make sure that our children are being educated, and that's hard work. Spending money is easy. It's hard work to educate the kids, and as chairman of the council, I'm going to guarantee that that happens. Thank you very much, and I would appreciate your vote.
Thank you both. Good evening. Thank you.
All right, we want to thank our council chair candidates. Thank you so much for coming this evening. And all of the candidates who came throughout the evening for mayor, for delegate to Congress, and for council chair. Thank you very much. Thank you, Nzinga. I'm Scott from Empower Ed. Just a few closing announcements here. Coalition for DC Schools and Community hosted this event. There is a QR code on here for their website, it's UCC for DC. And if you go there, that is where you will find the questionnaires once they are posted after March 9th for all of the races, not just including the 3 we did tonight, but for candidates for all of the races. In addition, I want to thank Linella's Catering for the food that they provided. Please take some with you so we can finish that off. And also, of course, Pastor Curry and the Pennsylvania Avenue Baptist Church for hosting us tonight. You have some additional links on here on ways to get involved. Final reminders, this is a ranked choice voting election, which means you can rank up to five candidates on your ballot. So if you like something, you really like something you heard from someone tonight, you can rank them first. And if you liked a little bit something you heard from someone else, you can rank them second. You get 5 choices on your ballot, and you can take advantage of all of them. So please remember, it's ranked choice voting. Additionally, there'll be many opportunities to get involved between now and then. And if you're interested in who is going to win these elections because of education issues, remember there's other ways to get involved in education issues every day to support our students. You can check those out on the program here. Again, thank you so much for coming out. Please stay involved, not just in the election, but in our education system. And we thank you all for being here.